right, so this is a talk. Today is the 16th of June, and this is a talk on the 8 worldly conditions. The Buddha said, monks, these 8 worldly conditions spin around the world, and the world spins around these 8 worldly conditions. Which 8? Joe, did you learn and teach this in the past yourself?
Yes.
Gain, loss, status, disgrace, blame, praise, pleasure, and pain. That's labho, cha alabho, cha yaso, cha ayaso, cha ninda, cha pasangsa, cha sukhancha, dukhancha. For an uninstructed, run-of-the-mill person, there arise gain, loss, status, disgrace, blame, praise, pleasure, pain. And for a well-instructed noble disciple, the same things arise. So what is the difference between the two? When he asked, of course, the monks were like, oh, well, you're our teacher, please tell us. Gain arises in an uninstructed, run-of-the-mill person. He does not reflect, gain has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, subject to change. He does not discern it as it actually is. So, let me look at the Pali. Anicca dukkha viparina madhoti yathabhatanapti janati. He doesn't discern it as it actually is. Okay. So impermanent, suffering, subject to change. I like to think of it as impermanent, suffering, and unreliable. The subject to change, you just think, well, yeah, it could change. But when you think unreliable, you're like, oh, right. You know? Like you might have a cane that was passed down in your family and you're using it to hike with, and it's old, and all things are impermanent, stress, suffering, subject to change, and the thing breaks on you just when you put your weight on it. Oops. Handed down in the family, used by a couple of generations, 2-3 generations of people. But right at that moment, its unreliability became manifest. Maybe not in a way that was very good for you. So this business, subject to change, it used to just, this phrasing, impermanent, suffering, subject to change. The subject to change would just kind of bounce off my forehead. I heard it. I could have parroted it back, but when I started thinking of it as being unreliable, then that kind of hit differently. Okay, so that's with gain. Loss arises. He does not reflect. Loss has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. He doesn't discern it as it actually is. Status or status? Wait a minute. Suddenly I can't pronounce. Status arises. He doesn't reflect. Status has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. He doesn't discern it as it actually is. Disgrace arises. So usually they say fame is the translation of that one. So fame or status arises. Disgrace arises, or infamy. He doesn't reflect. Disgrace has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. He doesn't discern it as it actually is. When disgrace or infamy happens to somebody, they're not thinking, oh, this is impermanent. Thinking, who said that about me? How do I fix this? Who do I contact? How do I make people stop saying this? What, you're trying to fix it. You're trying to go back to the way that things were before this terrible infamy arose. Blame, or here censure arises. He does not reflect. I'm going to say blame has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. He does not discern it as it actually is. Praise arises. He does not reflect. Praise has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. He does not discern it as it actually is. Pleasure arises. He does not reflect. Pleasure has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, subject to change. He does not discern it as it actually is. And finally, pain arises. And still the same. He does not reflect pain has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. He does not discern it as it actually is. Well, it doesn't stop there because his mind remains consumed with the gain. His mind remains consumed with the loss. Did that ever happen to you? Ever got a new something and all you can do is like a new watch, all you can do is look at it and look at it. Or you got a new car, you're touching it, you've got it, it's yours. Or there's a loss. Oh, the watch. Oh, my empty wrist. Or the car is damaged. Oh, the car, it was so perfect. And now it's like this. And it was perfect. And now it's like this. His mind remains consumed with the status. And his mind remains consumed with the disgrace. So that's fame and infamy. And yeah, that one bites. Fame and infamy. Oh my God. As soon as you're famous for something, it becomes who I am. Yeah, I'm the one who. This is me. This is my identity. You pick it up and you make it part of your uniform. This is who I am. You carry it around with you. Someone recognizes you. You're like, yeah, that was me. Yeah, that was me. Infamy burns. It rips away from you that identity, whatever identity you had that was on a positive side. And you just want to fix it. It's just so terrible. His mind remains consumed with the blame. His mind remains consumed with the praise. This is very similar to fame and infamy, but the fame and infamy are kind of on the bigger social level, and this is praise and blame. I read something. I haven't heard anything more about it, but a couple of decades or so I read that brain scientists had determined that exactly where in the brain you register disapproval from other people. And it's actually so close to the physical pain center that if you were to take an Advil or a Tylenol when somebody is disapproving of you, you'd feel better. So when we say, wow, that criticism hurt, it literally hurts. And so if someone has sharply criticized, that it just, ooh, ow. And so the mind gets snagged by it. You can't easily let that go. Not ordinarily. Maybe very mature people can, but not so easy for me. So it criticized me. It just the mind gets obsessed. The same with the praise. His mind remains consumed with the pleasure, and his mind remains consumed with the pain. You know those two, right? You're still remembering the best chocolate cake you ever had, the best this or that, the most delightful, that sunset, that time in Europe, that it's still there. It's like this aftertaste that you're like, yum, that was so awesome, and you still delight in it. And pain, that time you broke your finger, that time you sprained an ankle, that time you slammed something on some body part, that time that you had this or that belly problem, that time that, yeah, pleasure and pain. He welcomes the arisen gain and rebels against the arisen loss. He welcomes the arisen status, fame, rebels against the arisen infamy, disgrace. He welcomes the arisen praise, rebels against the arisen blame. He welcomes the arisen pleasure, and he rebels against the arisen pain. As he is thus engaged in welcoming and rebelling, he is not released from birth, aging, or death. From sorrows, lamentations, pains, distresses, or despairs. He is not released, I tell you, from suffering and distress. Now, on the other hand, Gain arises for a well-instructed disciple of the noble ones. He reflects, gain has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. What did I say about subject to change? Unreliable. He discerns it as it actually is. Loss arises. He reflects, loss has arisen for me. Who does that? You think, where is it? Where is it? I've got to have it. Give it back to me. I need this. This can't decay. It can't change. It can't this. They can't die on me. No. We don't think, loss has arisen for me. Not typically. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. He discerns it as it actually is. You're like, what do you mean subject to change? They're dead. They're dead. The car is stolen. It's gone. Yeah, but this whole life is going to go, right? Like the state of being in grief over it is impermanent. The state of remembering it, the state of caring, it's gone, it's done. I mean, think of all the losses you had in thousands and thousands of past lives, if you can accept that at all. Or just think of the thousands and thousands of losses you had that you forgot. There have been times that I've been in a quarrel with somebody and I'm all upset. And then I remember, oh, my memory's bad. I won't remember this in 5 years. Part of the benefits of postmenopausal femaleship. I won't remember this quarrel in 10 years. It doesn't matter. Status has arisen, so fame. It reflects, status has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. He discerns it as it actually is. Disgrace, infamy arises. He reflects, disgrace has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, and is subject to change. He discerns it as it actually is. Praise arises. He reflects, praise has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. Censure, blame arises. He reflects, censure, blame has arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. He discerns it as it actually is. The praise and blame. The Buddha gives there's a whole chapter in the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses on how gains and honors are so corrupting to a person, to where a mother who loves her son or her daughter says, may you be like these and these great disciples of the Buddha. But if you choose not to go forth, may you be like these other great disciples who are lay people. But whatever happens, may you never have gain and honor. So corrupting are they. So terrible are they. A mother who really loves their child would say, may you never have it. Like, that is not what mothers say, right? Mothers typically want you to have all the worldly success because that's supposed to bring happiness. But a wise mother would say, may you never, ever have gains, honors, and praise. Devadatta, the famous evil monk, the Buddha said that he was okay until gains and honors and praise knocked him off the rails, and then he went completely evil and ended up in the deepest hell, where he tried to kill the Buddha and so forth. His mind was ruined by it. So evil, so terrible are they, so dangerous. The Buddha said that he could look at a person and wrap his mind around their mind and know that this person wouldn't tell a lie under any circumstance. But later, after gains, honor, and praise has changed this person, he looks at them and sees them telling a lie right there. He knows beforehand that they would not tell a lie even to save the life of their mother. Then later he sees them telling a lie just to maintain their gains, to maintain their status and so forth. Wow, that is how corrupting, how terrible they are. So when people praise something for me, let's say they say, oh, your voice is so lovely. Your voice is like a radio announcer. And what I always say to myself, if I don't say it out loud, is temporarily. Thank you, temporarily. At the moment, at this time, before it changes. I'll say something like that, because if I run with that praise, if I absorb it, take it in, it's a poison. For me, it is. So sometimes when somebody's been really kind of gushing with praise, I stand there and look at them like, you're trying to kill me. You're trying to ruin me. So really for me, it's really helpful to think temporarily, like something with the voice. There are times like when I get a cold or something, and any time something happens with the voice, that could become permanent. One little injury, one little, flu or illness or something, your voice might never be the same. Today, mine's a little funny from allergies. So I really appreciate the lesson I got from the Buddha, from the teachings, that it's best to say at the moment. It's how it is right now. And then pleasure and pain. At each of those, he reflects that this is arisen for me. It is inconstant, stressful, and subject to change. He discerns it as it actually is. So this learned, noble disciple, his mind does not remain consumed with the gain. His mind does not remain consumed with the loss, and so forth. Not consumed with the status, the fame, or the disgrace, the infamy, the praise or the blame, the censure. Not consumed with pleasure, not consumed with pain. He does not welcome the arisen gain or rebel against the arisen loss, and so forth, not welcoming and rebelling against each of these other pairs. As he thus abandons welcoming and rebelling, he is released from birth, aging, and death, from sorrows, lamentations, pains, distresses, and despairs. He is released, I tell you, from suffering and stress. This is the difference. This is the distinction. This is the distinguishing factor between the well-instructed disciple and the noble ones, and the uninstructed, run-of-the-mill person. And then in poetry, this last 3 lines. Gain, loss, status, disgrace, censure, praise, pleasure, pain. These conditions among human beings are inconstant, impermanent, subject to change, unreliable. Knowing this, the wise person, mindful, ponders these changing conditions. Desirable things don't charm the mind. Undesirable ones bring no resistance. His welcoming and rebelling are scattered, gone to their end, do not exist. Knowing the dustless, sorrowless state, he discerns rightly, has gone beyond becoming to the further shore. So I think I mostly unpacked that as I was telling it. But these are what are called the 8 worldly conditions, the loka-dhamma. This is a very popular teaching in Buddhism to help us remember how the whole world is spinning around these things, that we're constantly chasing towards the one type and away from the other type. One time I did a little demo. I had a large group at my vihara in my previous place in South Carolina. Joe will remember that, I think. And I had this big crowd, and I had them choose silently someone that they wanted to be next to. Not really in real life, but just choose some random person. And then I let them loose. And so they kind of scattered around and eventually found some kind of equilibrium. And then I had them all choose one person to be near and another person to keep away from. And the chaos continued and continued and continued and continued because you couldn't settle in because somebody was always too near somebody else and had to get away or wanted to go towards it. It was a children's program, but a lot of adults were there too. It was just this really wonderful, it seemed to me, wonderful kind of a demonstration of how this business of grabbing at this and pushing away from that in our lives creates continual chaos, continual disruption. There's no rest in it. There's no peace in it. You cannot come to a state of equilibrium because you're always in motion, grabbing at this, running from that. And so I think it's good to, kind of pay attention to these things in this more abstract way, to see it not that my dear one is is leaving me, and how can it be? And this was the fault of the doctors, or whatever. But to see there is loss, and I'm resisting because I don't like it. My mind is consumed with it. You lose your money, your wallet. You lose the top of your, the ice cream from your ice cream cone, whatever it is. Try to see it in this more general, from this more general point of view of, yeah, loss arose. And this is the nature of these things, because everything is impermanent, inconstant, subject to change, unreliable. Or say, you just think that if you just get a little more money in the bank, you'll be all right. Well, and then you get it, you got it, and it's wonderful. Remember, it too belongs to the world. It too is impermanent. So whatever it is that we gain, impermanent. Whatever it is that we lose, it was impermanent. How much of our lives do we want to spend trying to get these things the way we want them, when it is their very nature that they do not stay in a particular way? We can want them to be this way. We can want them not to be this way. But for all of our wanting, things continue to change. But what happens with a wise one, a fully enlightened one? No more grasping, no more aversion. The mind isn't obsessed with these things, and not rebelling, not rejoicing and delighting in. It said welcoming there. I think welcoming is a little more neutral term than what we normally do. What we do is delight. You really plunge in and go for whatever it is that we think we've got. So not plunging in and delighting in, and not opposing, rebelling, fighting. They're at peace. And we have that potential too, if we want to put our minds to it, want to see it that way. Or we could just be, full of ourselves and all concerned with our selfish worries and all about me, and it's my pain and my pleasure and my this and my that, and I've got to have it my way. But that's not the happiest way to live, is it? So that is the talk of the 8 loka-dhamma.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Ayya.
You're so welcome.